Going from unhealthy relationships to healthy relationships is such a fascinating journey. When you look at the contrasting difference between healthy and unhealthy dynamics, you see that in the unhealthy dynamics, there were a lot of survival based traits. You weren't raised with healthy boundaries, individuation, and differentiation. No, you were raised in fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Your sense of self, your identity was very much based around external circumstances. And when I say external circumstances, what I refer to is codependent dynamics between self and other rather than a dynamic of autonomy. Even codependent dynamics between self and an inanimate object. You may have been taught that you're only worthy if you achieve something. Quite honestly, that's fucked up. Healthy dynamics are about healthy boundaries, individuation, and differentiation. There is a very real contrasting difference here in dynamics. Could you imagine being in a relationship with somebody that doesn't try to control you, doesn't try to change you, doesn't try to turn you into somebody that you're not, but instead actually has healthy boundaries, loves you and accepts you for who you are, doesn't need to give you validation and approval based on identity things because you give that to yourself? Now, I can imagine that for a lot of people, it might look like it's very challenging to go from unhealthy to healthy. Because, of course, I mean, first and foremost, if you were so deeply ingrained with survival based dynamics, if you were so deeply taught to defend yourself, to fight back, to flight and run away from pain, to shut down when somebody's disrespectful and abusive to you, to people please because you learned that you needed to do that in order to fucking survive. Do you see that for what it is? Do you see survival based identity for what it is? I mean, I'm not going to claim fact or truth here. I'm simply claiming the way that I see it and the way that I believe it is. This comes from Freudian psychology, survival based dynamics, and the reality that an identity that is raised in survival is raised conditioned to survive specific elements just to make it. An identity in and of itself. An identity in and of itself that, as it is raised through fight, flight, freeze, fawn. It's not raised with healthy boundaries, individuation, and differentiation, because otherwise it wouldn't be in survival. The identity needed to do things to survive. See that? The identity needed to do things. It couldn't just be itself. It didn't get to have the healthy boundaries. It didn't get to individuate and differentiate. No. It couldn't just be as it was because in the environment that it was raised, it was basically violated. It was not allowed to be as it was. So therefore, it had to do a bunch of things that it didn't want to: fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and it developed in that way to survive because it was raised in a survival-based way. The amount of anxiety that comes with that, the amount of depression, the amount of restriction, the amount of inauthenticity, the amount of suppression, repression, all of that stuff. Imagine a child coming into this world, developing into an adult, all the while experiencing this unhealthy compression, like it's in here, it's inside here, and it's being compressed into something that is not healthy. Here, you're not going to get the healthy boundaries, the individuation and differentiation. Instead, what you're going to get is an unhealthy system of survival-based dynamics, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and you're going to be molded based on that. So essentially, all of these things you're going to learn that are actually authentic about you, you're going to push them out into the shadows, shadow work. You're going to abandon yourself. You're going to learn that as you are, you're not good enough. You're not acceptable, so you have to become somebody else. That's the entire dynamic of unhealthy relationships. Imagine going from that, and yeah, I know that was a lot, but I needed to really preface everything of this theme in this video with that to make this all make more sense. Imagine going from that, like essentially like maybe like you reach adulthood in your mid-20s, early to mid-30s, and you're just kind of like confused. It's almost as if like you're like unconscious or like super subconscious about who you are. You're not totally aware of yourself, and simultaneously you continue to find yourself over and over again in what you don't even know, because you're unaware of it, are unhealthy relationships. It is fucking mind-boggling how normalized to so many people unhealthy relationship dynamics are. So much so to the extent that people regularly play them out on a daily basis. But imagine going from unhealthy to healthy. For a lot of people, it just doesn't click. One, because where they are mentally and emotionally, they're just not equipped for that dynamic. It's not heart rate elevating. It's not butterflies inducing. It's not, oh, I hope this person likes me. Oh, I hope this person likes me. It's not filled with insecurity. It's quite the opposite. Healthy relationships are very much about secure dynamics. You not source self-worth from the other in a healthy relationship. Your self-worth is entirely determined by yourself. Going from healthy relationships to unhealthy, other way around. Going from unhealthy relationships to healthy relationships is literally a night and day dynamic. It is totally contrasting. And when you look at the differences, people that are in unhealthy relationships look at healthy relationships and they don't see what the people that are in it see. Because the people that are used to unhealthy relationships are very much used to fight, flight, freeze, fawn. They're very much used to being somebody that they don't even want to be, just to be in the relationship and be loved by the person. People in healthy relationships, they have healthy boundaries. They are individuated. They are differentiated. They do not source self from other. They have a secure sense of identity. And quite honestly, that is in and of itself the theme of this video. The difference between having an insecure identity and a secure identity is really the theme of this whole video, because those are the differences in what creates unhealthy versus healthy dynamics. In a survival-based childhood, you formed an insecure identity because through survival, through fight, flight, freeze, fawn, you learned that you had to do a bunch of things that were not authentic to you, not authentic for you, to receive love, validation, approval, acceptance, so on and so forth. If you were to be raised in a healthy childhood, you would have gotten the healthy boundaries, the individuation, the differentiation. From a very early age, you would have learned, after your parent or whoever raised you instilled you with healthy self-esteem, you would have learned to give that to yourself afterwards from an early age. But being an adult that is, no judgment, of course, as I've said before, no judgment, no shame, no guilt. It's not good or bad or right or wrong. It's just the difference between unhealthy and healthy. Being an adult that lacks a secure identity regularly finds him or herself in unhealthy relationships because that person lacks healthy boundaries. And let me put things into perspective real quick just to make this make sense for the matter of how boundaries have to do with identity. If you see yourself having an extrinsic sense of self-worth, an externalized sense of self-worth, if in childhood you were taught that you will only be worthy if you get that person in your life or you get that thing in your life, but without it you're not worthy, that is basically how you learned to externalize your sense of self-worth. That was learned in childhood. So in those types of unhealthy relationships, you are sourcing your self-worth from another person. In a healthy, by the way, that is lacking healthy boundaries. In a healthy relationship, the people have healthy boundaries. And in this case, specifically, healthy boundaries of self. What does that mean? That they do not externalize to other their sense of self-worth. So what they don't say is, I'm only worthy because you tell me that I'm worthy. I'm not worthy for any other reason. Because if they were to say that, that would be unhealthy. This is the contrasting difference between unhealthy and healthy relationships in regards to boundaries with identity. Where do you begin? Where do you end? Oh, I begin and end right here. No part of me is in any other person. Meaning that nobody else gets to determine whether or not I'm worthy. That's just the reality of it. That is how healthy individuals think. But the reason why this is healthy is because from a very early age, in the healthy childhood, again, no childhood is perfect, no parent is perfect. Every child comes out of childhood with some level of marring and scathing. That's just the reality of it. In the healthy childhood, the boundaries, this is very, very, very important to understand. The boundaries of the identity were developed in a healthy way. Person A starts and ends right here. Person A, you could call this person A. Person A is not in any other person. You could consider both these two people right here. In person A, person B. In person A, this person lacks healthy identity boundaries. This person sees their sense of self-worth in this person right here. So this person goes over to this person. Forget about the whole dynamic of unhealthy, healthy. This is just me displaying the reality of people that lack healthy identity boundaries. This person goes over to this person. Hey, you are worthy. Yay! Instead of, I don't determine your worth, and I don't determine your worth. Cool. You know, it's like that's the reality of it. So what I'm trying to do here is paint a very clear picture of the contrasting difference between unhealthy relationship dynamics and healthy relationship dynamics in many ways, but in one specific way that I think illustrated things in a really beneficial way. Because the amount of people in unhealthy, I mean, I'm pretty sure that it's like everyone that is in an unhealthy relationship, they do not have an intrinsic sense of self-worth. One of the biggest reasons that they're probably in the relationship is for the external validation, worth, approval, acceptance, etc. That's really the way that this works. And so when you go from, I mean, you'd have to do a ton of work on yourself to go from unhealthy to healthy. But showing here the contrasting difference, if you believe that you're only worthy if somebody validates your worth is extrinsic. And from what I've learned, also unhealthy. It's not good or bad or right or wrong. It's just not healthy. Because what is healthy to do is to determine yourself, determine your sense of self-worth. I mean, quite honestly, like, if you think about it, like if somebody were to come up to you and you know, if somebody has intrinsic self-worth, if they have a healthy sense of self, and somebody were to come up to them and be like, you are not worthy, this person would literally just be like, huh. They would just leave. And I'm not saying that because they would feel defeat. They would see that person as unhealthy as they are. Nobody gets to determine your sense of self-worth. When you are in an unhealthy relationship, you do not see that because you lack healthy boundaries. Because your sense of self is in somebody else. When you are in an unhealthy relationship, you lack healthy boundaries, and that manifests in multiple different ways. Externalized, extrinsic self-worth is just one of many. But going from unhealthy after having done the work, or going through the process of doing the work, going from unhealthy to healthy, a secure identity. When you have a secure identity, you don't have anxiety around any of that stuff. You know who you are. It's determined by you. That's the difference between an insecure, unhealthy identity and a secure, healthy identity. See it for what it is.